today we're a 7-figure company, but it really was rooted in this place of service and sharing healing from my own perspective of childhood trauma and abandonment and addiction and loss and betrayal, and having to find my way through that.
And I was listening to your story and I thought to myself, if she can get through that, people can get through almost anything. In this episode, I talked to the founder of Rising Woman, Sheleana Aiyana, about how she turned her life around after severe trauma. These are the types of conversations that really change lives and beg the question, why don't they teach us this stuff in school? If this is your first time listening to this podcast, please subscribe and help support the channel. Because in addition to this one, my upcoming conversations are with some of the most extraordinary people I've come across who can help you navigate some of life's most challenging obstacles. Your support means everything to me and my team. Thank you so much and enjoy the episode. Sheleana Aiyana, so happy to have you here. Just to intro you really quick, Sheleana is the founder of Rising Woman, which is a community, and the author of Becoming the One, which is a book and also a journal. And we'll get into that. But first, I want to talk about your community and what inspired you to make it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. When I first started Rising Woman, I was actually a lot younger. It was in 2015. And at that point, I was writing a lot still. And I wanted a space to be able to just share my own healing journey and the things that I had learned along the way. And I began writing, putting blog posts up. And eventually I built the website and joined Instagram in 2018 and started posting my writing daily, sometimes twice a day. And it really just took the world by storm. It really just went viral. And we grew to millions of followers, which was such a blessing. And it really was a place for me first to share my art and my creativity. And I didn't sell anything for the first 2 years. It was all about service. And I didn't want to put any pressure on the company that I was building to make money. I didn't want it to feel extractive. I wanted it to feel really rooted in service. So I waited about 2 years and I gave a lot and I created a lot of free offerings and then eventually launched an offering. And today we're a 7-figure company, but it really was rooted in this place of service and sharing healing from my own perspective of childhood trauma and abandonment and addiction and loss and betrayal, and having to find my way through that and to get to a place where I could not only be in healthy relationship, but that I could be of service.
I love that. Something I love about your work is that it's so empowering and that your personal story is filled with all of those things you just mentioned, loss, betrayal. I heard you talking about being a foster kid when you were young. And I was listening to your story and I thought to myself, if she can get through that, people can get through almost anything. And I think that's the beauty of your work, is that it comes from a personal story and it comes from actually overcoming all these things. So, when people read your work, I think, especially if they're just discovering it for the first time, yes, it lands so nicely and it's so empowering. But to know the backstory behind it is actually even more empowering because you've been through so much. So I want to get into what you had to overcome and what actually helped you overcome everything that you've been through, from the heartbreak to being a kid. You were on your mom's doorstep nonstop, just running away and coming back, all of that. Yeah. So you start with wherever it starts for you.
Yeah. Well, over the years, as I continue to get older and I learn more about my own history, or I ask more questions, I learn more that the pattern in me of the runner really began when I was born. So my mom was about 22 years old when she had me. And she had only interacted with my father for a couple of months, and he wasn't a safe person. And so she was already in the hospital for him assaulting her before she gave birth to me. And she went into an emergency cesarean because her placenta ruptured. So we had like minutes to live. It was very urgent. And what I learned is that we ended up sneaking out the back door when she was released from the hospital because he had been stalking us. And so we were sort of always on the run early on. And of course, you know, one of those key imprints of trauma for me was when I was about 3 years old. My mom packed me up in the car and didn't really tell me where we were going, and then dropped me off at the doorstep of a foster home. And I remember kicking and screaming and crying and watching her headlights, you know, turn on and drive away. And by the time I was 12, I ended up in permanent care. So the government had custody of me. So now it was a signature on a piece of paper rather than the humans. That's what it felt like. By the time I was 14, I was already addicted to crystal meth. When I was 12, my curfew was 5 a.m., and my allowance was a 2-liter bottle of alcohol and a pack of cigarettes when I was 12. So 14, addicted to crystal meth, on the streets, running away from foster homes. Police officers knew me by name. By 16, I started to clean up my act a little bit, started working 2 jobs, homeschooling myself. 19, of course, I end up in a very abusive relationship that I'm really lucky to have survived because it was really, really dangerous. And I can remember one distinct moment where I will leave out the gruesome details, but I had locked myself in the bathroom and I couldn't recognize myself in the mirror. And all of a sudden, this opening in my crown and this vision popped in of me speaking on stage to women. And the message that I got from Spirit was, this is a part of your path. You are here to work with women and to help them heal. And of course, I was 19 and my life was a total mess, and I had no business helping anybody heal because I wasn't healed myself. But I always kept that vision with me. And as time went on, I met a person who seemed better than the rest. I was like, well, you'll do. You're safe. You seem like a safe person. I must have broken the pattern. And he was from another country. He's from the US. And we ended up getting married, not really because we were in love, but because situationally we wanted to stay together and see.
How long ago?
This was when I was like 23. Yeah. So quite a while now. I'm 37. And so we get married, and within a year, he betrays me and leaves for a friend, and leaves me with debt and defrauds me and leaves all of his stuff at my house for a year. And it was just quite devastating and catastrophic. But when he drove away, I had this trigger and this flashback of being 3 and kicking and screaming for my mother. And right in that moment, I knew this is not about him. This is about my healing work that I have to do with myself and my inner child. So it really catapulted me into a deep healing crisis that I'm so grateful for. And that's how I began the path of healing. And it was within 2 years of that I started Rising Woman.
Unbelievable. Mm-hmm. I had no idea you were an addict also.
Yeah. Yeah, really young too. So it's interesting because I was first started smoking pot when I was 11. Smoking packs of cigarettes, getting drunk. So, you know, by the time I was 19, I was done partying. I was like, I'm going to quit drinking. I'm just going to, and I didn't have to go to rehab. Fortunately, I had a really strong will, and I just decided that I wanted to stop. It's the same with the crystal meth addiction. Somehow
You didn't go to rehab for that?
I didn't know. You know, I had one moment where it's really strange. When I was 14, I was so addicted to crystal meth, and I sold most of my belongings to acquire the drug. And then I would do the crystal meth, and then I would stay up all night, and I would write, and I would process my life. Writing has always been a vehicle for me for healing, and since I was like 3 years old. And so in some ways I look back at that time, I'm like, well, I was using it for the best cause. But I remember one time where I just teetered on the edge of an overdose, and that was enough for me, and I just decided to stop. And I went back to another foster home for 2 years before moving out on my own. And somehow I've just had this guide with me all along that's really supported me in willing my way through to the edge of healing, and I'm really grateful for that.
Unbelievable. I love that, you know, you've been through those experiences, but you're well adjusted you're married, you're a parent, you live a wholesome life. I think that's what's so inspiring to me, because even to get here without having gone through addiction and all these things is hard.
It's so hard.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, hats off to you for that. I want to talk about what the foster care system is like, and what it felt like for you uh, internally, just going from home to home.
It was really hard. And I would say to this day, you know, I'm almost in my 40s and I still don't like sleeping over at other people's houses, really. It's, I've worked through it enough that I can do it, you know, and my husband is very much just like open, go with the flow. Just, yeah, we go sleep over at a friend's house. And I'd always be like, no, I want to get a hotel. I need my own place. So there's still this lingering imprint, because when I was a kid, I never had control over my environment or where I was going to go. And things could change in an instant. My mom would kick me out, or she would attempt suicide, or something traumatic would happen and I wouldn't have a place anymore. And so I would spend a lot of time sort of figuring out where I fit in this new home with this new family, with these people who don't know me. And, you know, abuse happened in those homes sometimes. And then I was fortunate enough to have a really amazing couple of social workers who had my back. And they really took care of me and ended up finding me good homes to be in after that. And I feel like, in a way, you know, the shadow of it was this feeling of disempowerment and being out of place and being rejected and being unwanted and just being just like kind of an object, because I'm just getting passed around to these homes and nobody's really claimed me as theirs. And belonging is a core human need. And so that imprint of rejection and shame was really deep in there for a really long time. The gift of it was that I got to sort of sample alternative lifestyles. You know, I came from a place where we had no money. We lived off of the food bank. I lived in the shadiest neighborhood you could possibly live in, where everybody on my street had either been to jail or was dealing or doing drugs. So for me to get the opportunity to sample other lifestyles and see how other people were living was beneficial for me, because that's when I started to notice, oh, I like this lifestyle. I like what it's like to have wealth. I like what it feels like to have a nice home. I like what it feels like to have nice things. And so that sort of set my sights on creating a life where I could give that to myself really early, you know. But yeah, it was painful. Of course, it was really, really painful.
It sounds like being financially free made such a difference to you.
It did. I I always wanted to be an author. I remember being like 8 years old and practicing my Oprah interview in the mirror. And I, at a very early age, I remember telling my mom, you know, I'm not going to have children until I own my own home and I'm wealthy and I have everything that I need. And it always was important to me. Financial freedom is important to me. And I think it makes sense. You know, anyone who's a survivor, anyone who's ever gone through intense trauma or had the sense of disempowerment in their lives will want to have a form of control. And having financial freedom is a form of control over our own lives. So yeah, it is.
It is,
one
and
of my.
the reason I ask is because I think people don't talk about it enough, and I think there's this misconception that money is evil, and I don't think
Yeah.
so. I think lack of money is actually evil, and it's what causes a lot of crimes. And you know, as long as you're not deriving your happiness from just money, then it's actually a very empowering thing to make it.
Well, and money is energy.
It
Right?
is.
And I say this to people all the time. Money is just one form of energy. It's one form of currency. And we have to remember that it's up to how we interact with it. And humans, we have this funny ability to sort of denature anything that we interact with, or to extract from it, or to kind of take the worst from it. But everything is energy, and so we get to choose the frequency from which we operate with money. And money can either be a tool or it can be a curse. And for me, service has always been at the forefront. So, the only reason I set my sights on making more or creating more abundance is to create more ease, not only for my own family, but for my community or for greater communities around me. On the day that my book published, my first book, Becoming the One, I just went to my job volunteering at the food bank, and they were like, "What the heck are you doing here?" And I was like, it just really keeps me grounded to be able to be of service while I'm also receiving so much energy. And it's the same with money. The more that we have, the more we have to give.
Was there ever a time where you said to yourself, you know, I think I'm deserving of more? And how did you make that shift? Because I would imagine the way that you grew up, and I don't know if this was your experience, but even without that level of trauma, I still had such a hard time getting to the point where I felt like I deserve more. So was there ever a moment, and how did you sort of turn that on or get to that realization where you're like, oh no, I deserve to be this and I deserve to do this and I am powerful enough to be of service in this way?
It always, to me, comes down to true integration of the self. So true integration of the self looks like really having taken the time to analyze what it is in our makeup, in our personality, that is a mask. Where have we armored up? Where have we masked up? Where have we put on this false sense of protection to create a personality or a persona that isn't true to who our essence is? And as we are able to shed those layers and really come to the true integration of who we are, which is our essence, it's a lot quieter. It's not loud and in your face. It's just a rooted sense of being at home in ourselves. And when we have that sense of quiet confidence, then we are able to hold more. We are able to receive more. And it really does come down to knowing that we are worthy and we are whole and complete on our own. And this ripples out into our relationships, our family relationships, all of it. And so for me, it's all sort of related. All of the pillars of our lives are sort of mirroring each other. So if one is out of balance, everything else is going to be out of balance too.
No, it's so true. So how do people is integrated and aligned the same thing?
I would say aligned is a little bit different because alignment is sort of we're getting aligned with what our vision is or with who we say that we are. And integration is really looking at all of our parts and creating wholeness. We're taking all of our shadow parts and all of our light parts, and we're alchemizing that into wholeness to remember our innate essence of who we are, of who our souls came here to be. And then the alignment piece is living every day in alignment with our values and why we are here. Yeah.
You knew very early why you were here.
I did. Yeah. Writing. That was always my path.
It's funny because I think even if people are not going to be writers as a profession, writing in the form of journaling, which is why I love your book, the journal book, so much, it actually does provide clarity. And I think people don't do that enough. You know? What are some of I know you have so many prompts in there, but what are some of your favorite? Do you work with people one-on-one also?
I don't do any one-on-one anymore. Yeah.
I didn't know that you did it ever.
Yeah, I did when I first started out, like 10 years ago. I was doing a lot of one-on-one, but it actually became overwhelming really quickly because I couldn't keep up. And honestly, the more that I worked with people one-on-one, the more I realized we're all dealing with the same thing, really.
Root cause.
Root causes. And if we're not dealing with the exact same thing, we're dealing with something that would be much more profound, healed in a container with other people, where we can mirror each other and be in co-resonance and relate to each other and sort of rid ourselves of these stories that we're so broken or so unique or so different from everybody else in our woundedness that nobody could possibly understand us. Because when you get together in a group and you're really vulnerable not like pretend vulnerability, but like real depth where you're like, this is it, this is all my stuff. You realize like it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, we're all dealing with similar stories. And it's so healing to just share those fears and to be seen and to be loved for who we are in a group. So I started doing group work within a couple of years of doing the one-on-one. And I also ran women's groups for years as well. And I really enjoy that. And my team now, I have a team of somatic experiencing practitioners and therapists that work with rising women, and we do a blend of sort of esoteric work, nervous system healing work with somatic experiencing, and then relationship work, conscious relationship work.
Okay, wow. Can you break that down into what
Yeah.
that's? Let's say I come to you and I'm like, Shay, I need to overcome these specific traumas, and I can tell I'm not over it,
Yeah.
and I want to be less triggered as I move through the world, and then after that, I want to be a well-adjusted person who aligns with someone else in a healthy relationship. What kind of process do you take people through?
Yeah. So one of the core programs that we have is called Soma for body, and we do a really unique blend. We look at everybody's chart, so we look at their Chiron placement, which is your core wound placement, and we just help you understand that. So this is like the imprint of your soul's work. And then we also look at your soul guide, which is where are your love placements. So what are your lessons in love? We look at your human design. So what is your authority? How do you make decisions? Because this is another important factor. If you have spent your whole life thinking you need to know instantly and you're rushing yourself, but you actually need to sleep on it, that's important to know. And then we do the conscious relationship work, which is having that core foundation of values, self-understanding, integration, shadow work, those core spiritual teachings of relationship, really understanding how to be in relationship. And then the most important piece, in my opinion, is that layer of somatic experiencing. So I tell people I would never, ever now offer a program that did not include somatic experiencing. Like I'm opening up a mastermind for women in business who are specifically in creative business soon. And a big piece of it is going to be somatic experiencing.
What is somatic experiencing?
Somatic experiencing is a modality that was it was created by a man named Peter Levine. He's now in his 90s. He wrote Waking the Tiger and many other books. And a lot of somatic work is based on that core modality. And we're really working with the nervous system to rewire and to also be able to process stuck trauma. So anything that you're holding on to, it's not in the mind, it's in the body.
Body keeps the score.
The body keeps the score, exactly. And so, again, you can know your pattern. You can be very self-aware and you can understand why you do what you do, why you believe what you do. You could see the pattern perfectly. But can you transcend the pattern? Only if your nervous system is on board. And your nervous system's only on board if you're actually working with it. And what does that look like? It looks like learning how to be attuned to yourself. It looks like being able to return to your body and to your center instead of projecting outward or chasing love or chasing approval or avoiding hard conversations. It looks like being able to be in your body and your nervous system trusting that it's safe to feel instead of going to a different coping mechanism.
That's a really important word, safety. And I didn't take any of these words seriously when I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
I didn't really pay attention to it. I thought, therapy was just something I had to do. And I didn't understand the purpose of it as it would help me integrate into my life and in my relationships. Now, when I hear the word safety, it's the first thing I think that I need in any friendship, any relationship, any work environment. And then when I think of safety, I think of vulnerability. Where can I feel safe to be vulnerable? And I think there's a time and place for vulnerability, and I don't necessarily know what people are supposed to look for. But when someone comes to you and they're like, I need help being more vulnerable, In what settings would you encourage that? In what ways would you encourage that? Because some people don't even know how to be vulnerable when they're wearing this mask of who they're supposed to be in society, in their communities, etc.
You need to start in a safe container. You need to start in a container that's designed to support that, not just spilling your beans at the cashier checkout line, right? That person is not going to be able to hold whatever it is that you're sharing, or going to somebody in your family who perhaps doesn't have the language or the capacity. So I always encourage people to find places that are designed for that. So working with a one-on-one practitioner, joining a program like mine, finding somebody else who really resonates with you, who does somatic work, and getting yourself into a container where you can not think your way through it, but feel your way through it. And vulnerability isn't something that you can force. It's something that naturally occurs as the result of feeling safe. And being safe is nuanced, because if I've never felt safe, then you could be the safest person in the world, but I probably still won't feel safe because I'm too caught up in my stories and in my projections about how the world is unsafe and how I can't trust anybody. And if you try to show me love or extend to me, I'll probably be suspicious or paranoid about it.
This is so powerful what you just said, because I'm someone who I'm chronically online and I study the chronically online. You know, I see people as how much time they are spending percentage wise online versus in reality. And something that I've discovered over time is that there are these little online, we can call them communities. I don't think they're healthy, but these online communities where people are collectively creating these beliefs and fears, for example, of the opposite sex.
Yes.
You have in the manosphere this belief that women only want you based on how much you earn and do not actually want to connect with you and do not appreciate you. Then on the other end of it, you have, you know, groups of women, individual creators that I've seen get big by instilling fear in women about men. They are this way. They will use you for sex. And it's not necessarily true of all men. So I'm seeing this collective unsafety between two sexes. And now a men versus women world that has formed online and is trickling into our brains and making people believe that we are unsafe with each other. And then you wonder why there are so many divorces or so many people who are unwilling to pair up or get into a relationship, even though it is a core human need.
Yeah, attachment is a core human need. Relationship is a human need. You know, social media is literally designed for division.
Yeah.
It's promoted and marketed as a connection tool because that's what gets us. That's what we all deeply want. And of course, I've had beautiful connections. I met you on Instagram, and I've made some really beautiful friends through that platform. And at the same time, at large, it is designed to divide us because that's what sells and that's what gets more traffic. So we have to remember that we are technically pawns in a system that we don't own. And to be able to come in that with a perspective of I'm here to share my art, or I'm here to offer something good, to plant a seed of hope or light in the world, and to not get sucked into the agenda. And that also requires, again, this integration and this sense of self, because the online world and the social media world is a perfect place for us to vent all of our unexpressed or repressed anger or shame. We can project it out. We can find something that we're really angry about, or we can misinterpret somebody's words and we can attack them, or we can do whatever we want to do without any consequence, really, because we're behind a screen. But when you get in person with somebody, you have accountability. So we have a 10 acres in our little island, and there's a fence between us and our neighbors who have a farm, and they have this big, gorgeous, white, fluffy dog, and he's a herder dog, and he's big. And we have this tiny little teddy bear dog who's 8 pounds, and yet he doesn't care. When they see each other at the fence, they just get all riled up and they start barking at each other. And we always joke that the fence is sort of like a screen because they're really big and tough, and then as soon as we open the gate, they both shrink and they go, oh, hey, and they kind of sniff each other, and then they relax. And I think that that's quite a metaphor for how we are online. Would you say the things that you say to somebody's face when you say it online? Check yourself. That requires a lot of awareness and also somatic awareness to notice when you're leaving your body and you're just reacting and getting triggered online versus actually feeling what's true in the moment. I get to spend so much time with men because my husband runs a men's community and he's always got men's retreats happening and men's groups.
How did you guys meet?
We met at a coffee shop.
No.
Yeah. A friend tried to introduce us multiple times and I sort of evaded him. And then we bumped into each other at a coffee shop. And right away I was like, "Are you Ben?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Hey." And it was interesting right away. I'm not really the kind of person who, if I just meet you, I'm going to like wrap my arms around you and like be hugging you. But with him, he was a little bit cold. And I just instinctively just like wrapped my arms around him and started rubbing his arms. And this was within half an hour of meeting him. Like there was just this remembrance between us.
It's interesting that you were so open, even though you have had a history of chaotic relationships with people that were not right for you.
Yeah.
What helped you get there?
Well, I mean, in the moment, that was just a sort of an instinctive impulse. And then we had about a month of just getting to know each other. And I actually ended it with him in that month because there was a few things that felt muddy water to me. Like he wasn't fully complete interacting with, some other woman and, or at least on her end, she didn't think so. And so I called him and I said, "Look, I don't do muddy water. So until you're clear, we're not going to engage anymore." And he got clear really quickly. And, we all cleared it up together.
The
And
girl too?
yeah, we're still friends. She was at our wedding. Like it was kind of a complex situation in that they had been together before and she was still having feelings and she wasn't complete with it. And so that felt for me because of my history with, my past relationship. I was like, I'm not doing this. If there's any unclarity around feelings for each other, I'm out. But right away, we just had this ability to talk about things. And when we started to date again, we started to, go on walks in the forest together and talk. It was just effortless between us. And we just had this resonance. And when we decided to be in relationship, we actually sat down. I had written him a letter. And it was me sharing all of my wounds and the things that I'm still working on. Like, here's my stuff. Here's what you're getting into. Here's what I need. It's not your responsibility to heal me, but here's how you can love me through this. And if we're going to do relationship, here's what I want from a conscious relationship. And this is the only thing that I'm looking for is a conscious relationship. And if you're not interested in that, you can say no, and I'll just love you and walk away. And he was interested, and he said yes, and we negotiated the terms. And then, of course, we went off into our own little power struggle and did our whole anxious avoidant dance. And
Did you?
oh, yeah, it was total mess for a long time.
For how long? How did you get through that? Because that's, that's its own beast.
Oh, yeah. Well, I like to tell people, the social media relationship coaches love to say that you just need to find somebody who feels really safe to your nervous system right away. You might feel safe initially because you're on the high of the endorphins of the honeymoon phase and you're projecting all of these things that you hope that they will be. But when it comes down to real life, your pattern is your pattern. And your soul came here with work to do, and you don't get to just escape that by trading out one warm body for the other. Your pattern is with you. And so it's going to show up in the next relationship and the next relationship. And then you're going to be working on that pattern until you die. The frequency of that pattern gets to shift and evolve and change as you bring more awareness. And the more integrated and self-aware and confident you are in who you are at your core, the more likely you are to find a person who wants to co-create and heal with you as an ally on that journey. And you are also going to take on their core work and their soul lessons in love.
In what way?
When you partner with somebody, you're merging with them, and we become who we bond with. So it's really important to remember that whoever you choose to partner with, you're also taking on the contract that their soul came here to work with in relationship. Because the only way to really do a long-term relationship and to be successfully married is to understand that once you bond together and you decide to build a life, you are that person's ally in healing. So whatever their work is to do, whatever they need in order to feel safe to heal, Your job as a good partner is to do your best to offer that, and theirs is to do that for you. And so I like to tell people, it's not so much about having, the perfect sense of ease or no conflict or no patterns arising when you first meet or as you go and progress in your relationship. It's more about mutual willingness to do the work, mutual self-awareness. Do you both know that you're co-creating this, or are you going to be stuck in blame? And mutual self-respect and respect for your partner. You have to really like each other and want to actually be together. And, it was the same for Ben and I. We had a lot of work to do. We thought we didn't because we were like, we've done so much work and now here we are in our conscious relationship.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't that way.
As I listen to you talk, I get the sense that spirituality, in some sense, is very important to this kind of work.
Mm-hmm.
Like earlier you said you were talking to spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Later you said, our soul has work to do.
Mm-hmm.
These are things that you don't get taught in like science class, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or even in the field of psychiatry.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems so core to the work that you're doing. What's so significant about this?
Mm-hmm. For somebody who has perhaps moved through the world with a feeling of brokenness or aloneness or rejection or shame, it can be really healing to remember that we are a part of something greater. And whether that's a connection to spirit or a connection to what you would call God or whatever higher power that is, it's fundamental, I believe, for us to have something that we are working with. In my own life, having never met my father, being abandoned by my mother at a young age and having a series of betrayals by her where I didn't feel that I had that divine love and protection that we all as humans innately need to thrive, I had to find my anchors in nature. So my sense of spirituality is very rooted in connection to the earth, in the waters, in the trees, in the mountains, in knowing that I am loved and I am held and I am whole. And that is for me part of my message, and that's part of the work that I do and what I weave throughout my books and my journal and meditations. And it is really important to me, and it looks different for everybody. It's going to look different for everyone, and I don't want to tell anybody what their connection to spirit should look like, only to provide them with a framework that really has resonated with me throughout my life to see if that's something that can offer them peace and offer them healing.
That's so beautiful. I'm trying to think where I want to take this. So once you met Ben and all this stuff started arising, it sounds like you were very candid in letting him know, like, these are the terms and this is what I will accept and this is what I want, which by the way, a lot of people are afraid to do.
Yeah.
Because they're afraid that if they say something, they'll rock the boat.
You want to rock the boat. You really do. And actually there's research that shows that, especially in, there's research that shows in heterosexual relationships specifically that if the female is bringing complaint very early on to the relationship, even in high volumes, there's much higher outcomes of success for that relationship than if she was not to bring complaint. Because it's actually a signal of safety and of authenticity in the relationship. If you can't rock the boat, if you can't check in with somebody and say, this is my vision for a relationship, what's yours? Do we align on that? Then you don't have a foundation to build from, right? You can't build a house if you don't have plans, right? I mean, you could, but the ceiling might cave in, or you might not have a proper foundation and you get one storm and it's going to fall over. And that's exactly true for a relationship and especially marriage, because in marriage, you are going to be under pressure. Marriage is not a fairy tale. It's hard work sometimes, and it can be painful and sexless and exhausting when you're raising children or you're dealing with finances or you're dealing with deaths in your family or a parent gets sick. we're real lifing together. It's not a fairy tale. And so you want to rock the boat. You want to test. You want to ask a lot of questions, and you want to qualify each other, and then co-create a vision for what your relationship looks like in the future. And do you align on that? And that is how you prune away what is not meant for you. And it's a good thing.
You have so much insight. I know you mostly only work with women.
I work with women and men. I used to only work with women.
Okay,
And now, especially with Soma, every once in a while, our last container, we actually had 2 men, and one of them was a 75-year-old man, and it was so wonderful. I love working with men too.
I know. I was gonna say I wasn't 100% sure.
Yeah.
Because you did say, I knew it was my soul's purpose to work with women. But I was gonna ask you, what do you think are things that specifically women deal with? Like, something that I think about a lot as an example, and you might have your own, is that so many women feel like they are in competition with other women because they were socialized to feel as though they are in scarcity, and that there are not enough resources, not enough jobs, not enough men, whatever. So they literally look at their own friendships sometimes through a lens of, this person is my competition, whereas men don't have it as much. And so that's like one thing I notice, and it doesn't mean every woman's like that. It just means that I've noticed it as a pattern. So I'm wondering if there's anything you're noticing on the women's side where you're seeing patterns and you have ways of dealing with it.
Yeah, well, like I said, a lot of us, we all kind of share similar themes, whether we're a man or a woman, but men are culturally conditioned much different. They're sort of taught that they shouldn't be expressed and that they should keep it all in and that they should be a certain way, which is why more men, about 80%, tend to be avoidant. And women lean more toward anxious, which is just more external. They're both experiencing anxiety, but women are more conditioned to express themselves. But at the same time, there's also so much pressure to be chill and easygoing and low maintenance and to
Not rock the boat.
And then also to, be the perfect wife and be the perfect mother and be able to financially provide for themselves and all of these things. And I'll tell you, it's an impossible feat, and it's a recipe for being absolutely miserable in your relationship. It's not possible to do all of those things perfectly. And so culturally, you look at the trad wife movement, and I'm like, I get it why this is happening, because women are exhausted. They're burnt out. If you talk to 9 out of 10 women, they're going to have hormonal imbalances. They're going to have high cortisol. They're going to have low sex hormones because they're tired. And so, they're glamorizing this time before where it sounds like it must have been so nice. You just
bake sourdough all day.
Yeah, right? But no, that we can't go back. We need to create something new, right? And I think that there's a new way that we're looking for. We're sort of trying to find our way where we can actually be regulated and healthy and live happy lives without having to do it all or be, the overgivers or the martyrs in our own lives. And something that I see a lot on social media is these reels about their husbands leaving their socks everywhere and how messy their husbands are. And there's this one that I get served a lot where it's me before a trip and my husband, and it's him just throwing a bunch of crap into his suitcase, stuff's everywhere, and it's her. Everything's meticulous. She's cleaning the house spotless, and he's just sitting on the couch. That's not my experience. My husband is very on it. He's so dialed in. I'm very lucky to have that. But I think that I am lucky. I think that the reason that I get served those reels all of the time is maybe Spirit's like, hey, you should be grateful. But it's also this is what a lot of people are dealing with. This cultural imbalance between partners where, one person just takes on more of the load. And that's difficult too, but that's something that I think we're aiming to change.
I think the important message is there's no one size fits all in any situation, which is why, again, I do love that you rock the boat and that you encourage people to do so, because we can't look at relationships collectively and be like, well, this is how men are and this is how women are and here's what you need to do and you should be distant and this is how
Yeah.
you attract them and whatever.
Yeah.
It sounds like, oh, this would
Yeah.
be right for everyone, but no, two completely different people coming together, there is no manual for that. There is no
No.
manual for that.
No, there are core principles that we can live by, and there are core values that we want to align. But every relationship is unique, and what feels good for me in relationship could be really boring for you in relationship. And there's different styles of couples who do conflict different ways and who have different visions for their lives. Like some people would look at the life Ben and I are living, chopping wood and having fires and living on 10 acres and having to do all of this land work and gardening and think, wow, that looks awful. And some people will think, well, that's a dream. And there's no lifestyle or way of being that is correct. And you don't need to be more masculine or more feminine or like,
Don't get me started
yeah.
on that, Shay.
It drives me crazy because I hear a lot of women who ask, how do I be more feminine so I can attract a partner? I'm like, well, are you a really feminine being? Because maybe you're just perfect the way that you are and you just need to find a partner who loves you for you. If you want to be more in your feminine, then of course you can do that. And this narrative that that's what it takes, or if you're single, it's because you're too masculine, or if you're taking charge or taking the lead, or if you're earning more money than your spouse, that you're masculine. I'm just like, I don't buy that.
Dude,
That's not correct.
no. And I actually have friends who, if you look at them, they're high earners, they're quote unquote more masculine, but they are in relationships. And when so many of my friends who are more feminine are struggling to find love. So, no, that's not true.
It's not
It's
true.
not true at all.
No.
And to give people that recipe as if, like, oh, this is the magic thing that's going to make you more desirable is so untrue. In fact, I would argue that because, we are all on a spectrum of men, we both have feminine and masculine qualities,
Yeah.
and men have feminine and
It's
masculine.
yin and yang.
Yeah, it's and to different degrees. I would argue that actually some women need to be a little more assertive and be things that are technically more masculine. And by the way, there are men who could very much, I'm not saying be more feminine. I like men who are masculine in certain ways, but if you're so masculine that you cannot open up and be vulnerable, then how the hell is any woman supposed to connect with you anyway?
Exactly. I completely agree with you. And, I had a spiritual teacher for many, many years, and he would talk about that a lot. And again, we're coming back to this word integration. Even the rising woman symbol, it's the integration of the lunar and the solar energies coming together for alchemy to create wholeness. And within us, we all have that. And if you have no yin and only yang, or vice versa, there's going to be an imbalance, right? And you're right. We do need to be able to call in that masculine, to call in that. I like to really talk about the fire energy. So we've got fire and water. So the fire is more of boundary setting, anger, expressive assertiveness. And then we have the water, which is those more yin qualities, which is the sensitivity and the intuition and the vulnerability. We need all of those things to be an integrated human in the world, to really show up in our hearts. And that is totally genderless.
I love that. You're right, it is genderless. Even the way I was talking about it, we think of them as masculine and feminine, but
Yeah.
they are genderless things.
Yeah, it's solar, lunar, yin, yang. It's all really, it's energy, and it's different sides of the human experience. And some people are much more yang and some people are much more yin. And I like to remind people, if you come in as a fire being, then your medicine is probably to explore working with the water more. If you're a fire being, you're more likely to be somebody who can be very assertive and set boundaries and say, no, you're not going to mess with me, and speak up.
Like I'm a Leo, I'm a fire, right?
Right. Oh, I'm not surprised. I would say for sure that you would be a fire being. I'm a fire being too. And so, I have no problem telling somebody off if they come at me or threaten me or try to cross my boundaries. But my soul lesson in this life has been to peel back the layers of protection and guardedness and really show my hurt, when it's safe with my partner, to say that actually really hurt my feelings, instead of coming at him with criticism or complaint. And I don't do that perfectly, but it's a practice. And for somebody who is a water being, who's really sensitive, they're probably a people pleaser if they're really far on that spectrum. Their work is to lean into their fire more, to be able to put themselves first, to speak up and set boundaries, and to know that they can take up space. And so when you look at whether or not you are quick to anger or quick to tears, that can tell you if you're more of a fire being or a water being. And people are like, well, what about all the other elements? And I'm like, yes, those are important. But for this particular exercise, we're just going to look at, in a situation that's triggering for you, are you more likely to break down and start crying? Or are you more likely to get defensive or angry or to shut down? That will tell you where your work is. And then in relationship, you will probably find somebody who's going to trigger that for you so that you can work on it.
Oh, wow. Is that different than shadow work?
I would say it's related. It's related, right? The shadow work, we're really looking at, what are our masks? What are the false personas that we've crafted in order to earn love or approval or to get ahead in the world? And what is the truth of our essence that's free of ego, that is not about being rewarded or seen or praised, and it's just what's true to us at a soul level, and we're very conditioned out of doing anything that doesn't get us approval externally. Right. And so, recently I'm really big into gardening now. I have a medicine garden. I'm planting my seeds and growing fields of calendula. It's actually out of hand how much calendula I have. And someone said, well, why don't you just start teaching gardening? And I was like, absolutely not. First of all, I'm new to gardening, and it's like decades worth of learning, but also this is something that's just for me. It's just that thing that I like to do as a hobby, and you don't have to turn everything into a business or become an influencer.
You can recommend gardening. How about like that?
I mean, I do recommend gardening.
So
for sure.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't have to turn everything.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah,
that's very true. Okay, I'm gonna end with a question that I ask every single guest that comes on this show, and the reason I ask it is because I find that it's very hard for us to, in order, determine what message is most important to us out of everything that we share. Mm-hmm. And it's a hypothetical scenario. Mm-hmm. So let's say you're at the Oscars and you are nominated for a documentary about healing. And they announce all the nominees, and then finally they announce the winner, and it's you. Mm-hmm. And you walk up to the stage. You thank everyone you need to thank. Mm-hmm. And then right after you do that, there's about a 45-second to 1 minute window where you can say anything you want, and it's going to go viral, and there are going to be headlines. What message is so important to you that you would share it in that window?
Wow. You don't make this one simple, do you?
You can think about it.
Yeah. I think ultimately the message that I feel so passionate about is that you were born whole and complete. You are divinely perfect, and we're here to be of service. There's nothing more important than remembering our innate wholeness so that we can be of service to others, because that's what connects us. It's not the stuff, it's not the money, it's not the fame, it's not any of it. It's not any of the things that you do. It's who you are and how you be. And so if you can move through your life with love and service in your heart, then you will die a happy death.
I love that. Okay. Thank you so much for coming on. This was amazing.